Hey folks, and welcome to Let's Talk. This is my show where I sit down with subject matter experts and or people well-versed in a certain topic in tabletop, and we editorialize, give our opinions, and generally discuss the comings, goings, and current hot news. Now, this isn't necessarily as G-rated as the rest of GMG, so viewer and listener discretion is advised. All right, so I'm here with Mike from Epic Duck Studios. If you guys haven't met Mike, he was a member of the co-op when it first started, and you've been doing your own thing for about, geez, how long now? 9 years?
It'll be 10 years next week.
Holy shit! Okay.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah.
And you've most recently actually been giving some classes at Adepticon on comic book style painting, and you got a group for that too. Mm-hmm. So I thought I'd have you in here today just to talk about these new Citadel Contrast Paints. This series, Let's Talk, is kind of just about taking a topic that's interesting in wargaming right now, and you know, bringing it to the light and just having some sort of real time about it. So
absolutely.
I printed up some miniatures for you there, and I do want to talk about that because the contrast paints, of course, a lot of people are asking questions about primer. What primer do you normally use at home?
I normally use either Vallejo brush on or just whatever the heck's in a rattle can and cheap.
Okay, the same as me.
What's the $5 rattle can from Walmart today?
So yeah, so Rust-Oleum being a big part of that. It's a funny story about Rust-Oleum, actually. I just discovered that Tester's Dull Coat, is all made by Rust-Oleum. Rust-Oleum owns Testers.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all.
You know what? I heard that at one point, and it just it didn't sink in.
It was on the bottom of the can. I just totally noticed it the other day. So anyway, Citadel Contrast Paints. What these guys are, for those of you who are listening that are sort of like not aware of the hype machine around this right now, which is going pretty strong. Is they're a system for quickly blocking in color. They're basically like an acrylic glaze. They dry flat. And they're not meant to like replace all the other paints. They're just a way to quickly get colors down on the model. They do that. So the science behind it is they do it through the drying and through the content of the medium it's in them.
Magic capillary action.
That's right. They have a low surface tension. And so the science of that is that all the little colory specks, which is the actual color in there, which is the pigment, as it dries, get forced lower and lower in the recesses, and they make a fade from top to bottom. So the trick the Citadel Contrast Paints are pulling here is they're taking the underlying color, and that's why they got these two special rattle cans of primer, and that leads us back to short story long. The primer is what we're using, and they let the light show through, basically. Yeah. And so, Mike, what are you painting there? You painting a Reaver?
Yeah, working on Space Marine right now. Throwing down. This is Griff Charger Gray, which is
cool.
Kind of more green. I don't really see gray at all in it.
It does look kind of green, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I see like no gray in it, but whatever.
It's almost like a dark turquoise, and you're doing it over which of the two base paints?
That's the Bone-ish one. Yeah, Wraithbone.
Yeah, Wraithbone. So what you put underneath kind of warms or colds the color.
Yeah,
so
you basically have like a warm gray or a warm white and a cold white is really what you've got there, right?
And that's what's going to show through when the contrast paint does its trick, which is done by drying. Yeah. So the two that you have there, they didn't actually send me the rattle cans for this. They sent me the base paints, and I just ran them through my airbrush with some Vallejo thinner over top of this surface primer, which is Vallejo Gray Surface Primer. I use this for pretty much, if I'm not sure how a miniature is going to take paint, I'll use this Vallejo Gray Surface Primer because it doesn't have any like super strong etching agent in it. I use it for Reaper bones pretty much exclusively because it won't melt them and make them sticky.
Yeah. Well, because what it is, it's a plastic skin that goes over the model as opposed to being like a chemical etcher, right?
That's right, yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons bones are often messy and sticky afterwards is because you're using a rattle can. And then some of them I actually use rattle cans. So Cosmo there, I actually just use this Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch matte white. And then some of the Infinity models you're going to see me painting later, I did with this Rust-Oleum chalk paint.
All right, so I want to talk really quickly to a few things I'm already noticing. On this shoulder pad here, this shoulder pad is a very, very smooth area. There's like no detail whatsoever for it to grab to. Yeah. And it's just like, it's just a pooly mess. It's actually pulling away from an edge here, which is a little bit weird. Huh. So you get like a sharp line like 2 millimeters above it. It's just a little bit strange.
Neat. I did actually really scrupulously, by the way, clean the mold lines off those when I built them.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, like you can
if you leave mold lines, you are definitely going to see them because they're going to pick up the contrast paint. It's going to dig in there.
The two little sort of divots on the back of the shoulder pad, like
are just like
them off. Boom. Yeah. So you definitely want to just be pretty careful taking your mold lines off, or hit them with a little bit of filler or something.
Now you're kind of going heavy over all the armor areas there.
Yeah, so this is sort of there's a couple ways from what I understand. This is my first time using these, but what I understand is there's basically 2 ways to use it. One is throw it on the whole model,
right, and
then pick out your details after with just your normal paints. And the other one is be diligent and apply to specific areas.
Do you want to show this on camera? I painted right before you came over. I painted a. He is a limited edition Sworn Sword Captain from A Song of Ice and Fire, and I did the other way to what Mike's describing here.
Sorry, it's telling me to charge this camera.
Okay, that's okay. As long as they can see it, we'll switch the battery in a second here.
Yeah.
The neat thing was that I left the parts like white basically that I wasn't currently doing a color on, and I blocked all the colors in.
Right.
So that one's a little bit different in that the I'm gonna grab you an extra battery.
Yep.
The whatchamacallit, that's because I'm carrying my
your mic pack is
my mic pack
traveling.
is coming with me. It's not in my pocket. The paints themselves basically need to go on in certain areas as opposed to the battery just died. No, pause it. Just keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Just pause this part and turn that off. They need to be in certain areas for them to show through. So like you can't paint the whole thing blue and then have it go put a contrast paint on afterwards. So these batteries are so old in this little camera that they're all just dying right now. Let's see if this one lasts a bit longer. It said I had 90 minutes, but that's clearly a lie.
Yeah, that's a good.
We haven't charged these batteries in forever. Yeah, we haven't charged these batteries in forever, and they're probably just totally dying.
All right, let's see.
What's that one say? That one says 128 minutes.
We'll see what that is.
We'll see if it's lying.
So I'm noticing already there's some big drippy pools, and this is the same. If you've used any of the pre-existing Citadel glazes or shades to do this exact same thing, it's the same behavior.
Yeah.
Like the bottom of this leg is just got a giant green drip on it. The outside of the foot here is just completely.
So gravity's going to affect them, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You're gonna get a darker color at the bottom where it's pooling or it's kind of hanging down, than at the top. Now I did notice though on some of the colors, so that obviously isn't one of them. But if you want to grab a different miniature and grab which one was it? It's either Wildwood, or the Gorthor Brown. That one is crazy dark. Actually, grab the there's a Relic Blade Dwarf there.
Yep.
And when that guy, you set him aside to dry, grab that super dark brown.
All right,
right there. Yep. And just do his wolf cloak or maybe his leather bits.
Is that this one? Cygor Brown?
Cygor Brown's the one. Yeah. And try that one because it goes on crazy thick. I did the boots on the Sworn Sword Captain there with that, and I was actually shocked by how thick it was. So.
Yeah, so I'm going to do this one a little more diligently. I'm not going to just splatter around the whole thing.
So just put it on the spots that want to be that color, and it does seem like they've added more and less pigments to some. So
oh wow, yeah,
right.
This one's.
You see what I mean?
The other one. So this is the difference between being a glaze and just a shade. I don't know how to describe it, but this one's just this feels like the old chestnut ink almost.
I was gonna say it's like painting with India ink, isn't it? It's got so much pigment in it that it's like you're drawing a Sharpie basically along of it.
Yeah.
But as it dries, it gets that same fade. The fade is just way more subtle than the one that you're seeing there with the what was that green color, that gray color?
That was the
Griff Charger gray.
Griff Charger gray.
Yeah. You do want to have a little bit of tooth, I think, to your primer, and you can see a separate video on this. One of the questions I got asked when I was talking about making videos for this stuff was if it was gonna paint right over Reaper bones. And if you don't want to take time to watch the video because you can see what actually happens if you watch the video, the answer is no. It will not go over Reaper bones.
It just runs right off it?
Well, so it beads.
So actually notice on this model there was actually some beading on the shoulders and a couple of places the back of the backpack. It just ran right off. Right. And I had to just go back and hit it a second time.
Interesting. Because then
that maybe
the contrast paint itself isn't catching basically. It's running away.
Yep.
And that's
that, or I had just finished eating a chicken sandwich and I got a smudge on it.
Impossible for your greasy fingers. So now, what would you use this for? Because obviously, I think in your comic style painting, there's probably a place for this.
So comic style painting, I've kind of got two different approaches to it. And one is I do all my colors first and I throw the black on top as the final step. And the opposite is I start with a super white miniature, do all the black as if I'm basically doing a comic book drawing, right? And then you add color after, it's always sketch ink color, right?
Right, because that's the original comic book way of doing things.
Right, and so I started kind of doing
everything and then put the colors on top.
And so I started doing that approach because I find it's a little bit faster, and also there's this really, really just, I don't know how to describe it, but just like when you have like this black and white miniature.
Yeah.
It's just, there's something that really just awesome about it.
Like when you're coloring in the lines.
Yeah, you're coloring in the lines. And the coloring takes like, so the thing is with that, I'm always doing a lot of coloring either with inks or with glazes, right?
Right.
Because I want to preserve, I don't want to cover up all the black.
Right. So you want to
and so I think this will actually fit really well into that because it's probably, like, this one might be a problem, this brown or right now, but like, that first color, like you definitely still see the black ink through it.
Absolutely, yeah. So you could use it to shade what it, like you could literally use it to do what you're talking about, which is coloring in like the comic.
Yeah, color in the lines.
Yeah. I was planning on giving it a try actually on the Monster Apocalypse models. I'm going to paint my what's his name, the Triton guy, Krakenoctus with him, because like Krakenoctus I think is perfect for the purples and the pinks and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
you get these like big strong colors. And I might even try some comic book painting. Who knows? I haven't done it in a long time. I have tried it before. It's been a minute, so maybe I'll do a little comic book painting, post it in your group.
There you go.
The other thing I think I'm going to use them for actually is infinity miniatures, because they are so like, so if you're intimidated by infinity miniatures, this is one of those things where all of that little detail, as long as you're okay with like painting in a few colors, all that tiny little detail that's on those miniatures is going to pop, right? It's just going to, it's going to have all of the things that like you see people shading with airbrushing right now on infinity miniatures be shaded just by the capillary action of the way it's drying.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that being the case because like infinity minis are like detailed to an almost like unreasonable level.
Right.
You know, like
which some people like. I mean,
well, for sure. It's not a complaint, but like you compare them to even like the most detailed Space Marine miniature, and like it's like they're under the clothing under their clothing is made out of like 0.25 millimeter hexagons.
It's funny, like well, it's true though. I will every once in a while paint Space Marines just to relax painting, because I can like paint Space Marines with my eyes closed because they're so. A Space Marine is almost by its, even just at its silhouette, it's a drawing of a superhero, right? It's big shapes of color, and it's not so like overly detailed that you have to worry about going outside the lines. You're not like stressing over tiny little objects. Like it's one of those things that I find.
Unless you're Space Wolves.
Space Wolves, because there's all kinds of shit hanging off of them. and of course I do have a Space Wolf for me. But like painting like Ultramarines or like anything where it's just like a standard Space Marine, it's so relaxing because you're just kind of like, you're literally blocking in color. And I think that's where the contrast paints are going to be really strong, is for people that want to jam color basically onto stuff that's relatively like, it's relatively big blocks of color. So, because here's the thing is one of the things this is being built out is being either beginner friendly or friendly to people who don't want to spend a lot of time painting. Yeah. And I think that's true to a degree, because it's either beginner friendly if you're just going to splash on the model. And a lot of like what we've seen in the advertising and stuff is just splashing over the whole model, like you did there with that Reaver. Yeah. It is like, the other option is doing what you're doing right now though, which is being fastidious and literally just painting in specific parts of the miniature.
So I mean, like I'm still taking a lot of time doing this because I'm, purposely picking out details. Yeah. But what I'm probably saving is I'm going to be able to do like one less highlight.
Exactly.
Or no highlights.
Or no highlights on certain parts of the miniature. Exactly.
And especially if you're just trying to get like you look at like a lot of like the board games that are hitting now that have like 150 pieces in them, like the Hellboy board game, like. This would be perfect just for cranking out like the 85 Nazis that came with it, right?
Or the giant pile of frogmen, or like whatever the thing. It's like there's 5 of each of this sculpt, and there's a whole like a zombicide or something like that for sure. And I can see myself using it for what you just talked about, which is cutting corners on certain things. So like cutting corners on blending like pants. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, seriously, like the folds and stuff on pants. Or like the little bits and pieces of like, because like there's no metallic, right? So you're still gonna have to do all the metallics afterwards. Doing things that are like solid jumpsuit colors and stuff like that, or Space Marines. But I think that it's still gonna require a lot of patience if you're gonna do the way you're doing right now, where you're blocking in colors, you're trying to preserve that primer.
Like I said, I'm not really necessarily, I don't think, saving time, at least not on the base coat. What I might be saving is just a couple steps of detailing later.
Yeah, because you got to preserve that primer color for the next contrast paint if you're just going to do all your base coats with contrast paints. And I think that's, it's like legitimately a way to do things. It's just like, where are you cutting the corners?
Yeah, like if I like slip up and get a little bit on his like arm now, like I don't, I can't just put like the skin color over top of it and expect it to work right.
You'd have to go back in with that base paint and touch it up. And I think that's part of why those base paints exist, actually, is to go and fix the spots where you accidentally go over where you want to use a contrast paint. So it's not really necessarily saving time.
It's still pretty wet.
But I think the strength probably is he still wet? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, is my Soren sword dry? Because he had some pretty big pools of color on him.
He's still a little bit wet, sort of like up underneath the cloak here, where you really probably just jammed the brush up in there.
Because the colors I threw on there were for the armor, the Black Templar Black, I think it's called. Black Templar.
Yeah, Black Templar.
And then the Administratum Gray on all of the cloaky bits, which was a lot thinner than I was expecting.
Apothecary
actually.
Gray?
That's white. So Apothecary Gray is
Basilicanum Gray?
Basilicanum?
That's not even a word, guys.
It's GW Latin, right? It's just made up Latin for people that kind of like Latin.
Okay. What do you know about these? So we have Ardcoat, which is Ardcoat. It's always been Ardcoat. Always will be Ardcoat.
Yep.
What's the difference between Storm Shield and Medium here? What are we?
So the medium I think is for making your own contrast paints.
Okay.
So like what that looks like to me is just a low surface tension medium. Okay. Because I got this stuff with no explanation, right?
Right.
So I don't really know what it is.
They didn't even like give you like a little brochure or anything.
Nah, really no. It's just, they just kind of showed up. So that one looks like it's going to be medium for either thinning the existing paints, like if you want to take that brown that's like super dark there and thinning them down, or dropping maybe a shade or another color in there and making them a contrast paint. You're just basically adding like a low surface.
Hey, and yellow's back.
Right? It's actually on that's what I used on the sword. Well, no, there's a bunch of names that are back.
Yeah, yeah. Like
I noticed that.
Yeah, Blood Angel's Red is here. Yeah.
The Ultramarines Blue's back. Yeah. But as a contrast paint.
Contrast Ultramarines Blue.
That's really funny. Well, because you could buy Ultramarines Blue again. It's just not the same Ultramarines Blue from my entire childhood. And there's a lot of blues and a lot of greens I found. There's way more cool colors than warm colors.
Yeah. I'm seeing that.
But so the sort of strength I think is going to be in those colors where you want to block things in and just get a quick fade. You're not ever going to come back to it. The limitations though, I think, and this is inherent to kind of the science behind how these things work. The bigger the surface it's going onto, like you said with that shoulder pad, that's not broken up by some kind of detail for it to catch on and the capillary action to create the fade, the less it's going to work its contrast way, right? So...
Yeah, like I watched a video of, I think it was Chris from Mini Wargaming, and tried it on a tank, and it just looked like crap.
Yeah,
like,
it has to go on all at the same time, right? It has to go on all at the same time and be drying at the same rate for it to do its contrast thing. And so the bigger the surface, especially when it's got big paneled areas, it's just not going to work.
So I think even like you were talking earlier, like even a Terminator is going to be just asking way too much of this.
Or a Dreadnought, I think, too.
Oh yeah, no,
because you're either gonna throw so much paint on it that you're gonna go through like half a pot of paint right away, or you're gonna have it dry in patches, and so what happens is the fade becomes all inconsistent across the miniature, right? And so you get this like weird patchiness to it. So I don't think this is gonna like by any way, stretch or form, change the way people paint. I think this just removes an obstacle to some people's way of painting. Because like for instance, right now, there's nothing you're doing right now with that paint you couldn't do with an airbrush. If you're just throwing down base coats, like especially if you're gonna do the whole
even like honestly, I could be doing this right now with Reaper Flesh Wash or Seraphim Sepia. Like there's or Reikland Flesh Shade. Like
pretty much the exact same thing, just with whatever your underlying color is.
Yeah.
The tones are stronger for sure, and they're flatter. I noticed as well. There doesn't seem to be any gloss in that medium at all. So like they don't go on and give you that. You know when they pool, the old inks used to pool, there'd be like a shine.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any of that on these.
So what they're saving you is varnishing later too.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I think that's what the Storm Shield is. I think the Storm Shield's a matte varnish. So if you get some shine, it's gonna stop the shine basically. But the inherent kind of limitation is that you're not able to do a really big surface. And so like I said, I think this for certain miniatures that you have to do a lot of really fast, like skeletons, right? Like you put down that warm color, what is it, Wraithbone?
Yeah.
And then you just pound out skeletons. Like you could still already kind of, like that was the old Devil in Mud trick, right? You painted a bunch of skeletons white, you painted all the metallics, and then you washed the whole thing brown and they were finished. Like you didn't even they didn't even go back and touch them afterwards. And there was that whole fad probably in like maybe 2005, 2006. Remember when everybody was dipping?
Yes.
They were all like, the whole world was like, I could paint an army in an afternoon.
That was like the entire, like that's what army painters started their whole entire existence
literally
on, right?
just selling floor wax with like new labels.
$25 for a $5 can of wood varnish.
Well, but it had to be the right can of wood varnish, the strong tone, the whatever tone it was going to be.
But it's straight up like, even like you smell it, it's just Varathane.
Of course it is, yeah. So it's funny, my buddy Chris Kratz, I remember he painted a guard army in basically like an afternoon. So he got all, I mean, he spent one day, he got it all assembled, and then he went and did all of the like the basic work. So like the shoulder, the boots were all like a light brown.
Yep.
The weapons were all like a certain tone, bit of metallic, bit of flesh paint. And then he got like a big bucket, like a big like Home Depot, like you know the ones you would mix like spackle in. He got a power drill, and I shit you not, he made a mount on the end of the power drill that would hold like a 25 mil or 40 mil base. And he would take the miniature, dip it in the Varathane, and then put it in the bucket and spin off all the extra.
Right, because that was the one I found, like, I tried the dipping method, and like the longest thing is waiting for the dip to, like, you have to sit there and shake it off, right?
Right, so instead of doing that, he would just power drill it off, and he did like 150 guardsmen in like, I don't even remember, it was like a day or two. And we're like, he got them all dipped in like maybe like 2 hours. Yeah. And this was his big like we can get miniatures like painted quick like trick basically. And this seems like in the same vein, right? It's a way of, if you don't want to bother shading and highlighting, but you want your miniatures to look okay and you feel like that's a barrier to you doing something, then this lets you just do it and get it done. You just paint with washes basically. Yep. How's that guy coming?
Pretty good. I'm at the point now where I'm painting details small enough that I'm like starting to blur outside the lines.
Right.
So I'm either going to have to just accept the fact that it's going to look a little sloppy or come in with the base coat color and just like...
And touch it up afterwards, yeah. Because like, I think that's going to be a lot of it, is picking 3 or 4 of these contrast paints that are like the time savers, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I will say actually, this is the Gilman Flesh, and I actually really like what that one comes out as.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very...
I used, which one I used? I used Fire Slayer, I think, on that one. So you want to hold them up together so people can see the difference? Yeah,
I'm trying to
for those of you not listening to this.
Oh, there's Fire Slayer Flesh. Yeah, it looks very, very dark, but I mean that's
what's you put the two miniatures next to each other, you should be able to see what they look like when they're done. I think you're a bit pinky.
Yeah, this is more in line with sort of just GW's like normal
flesh, Requiem flesh shade,
yeah,
or whatever it is. And those were both the same. I think both of those were the gray sear base coats. Which is nice. And
I think with this guy, because I'm actually using a lot of warm colors here, I probably would have wanted the Wraithbone as the base coat, I think, because I'm doing like,
I honestly don't think it would matter that's like.
I don't know how much. Well, with the brown, it's not going to matter. That brown is so
I think it's going to matter more on the yellows and reds than on like the browns and the flesh tones. Like that yellow is probably going to warm or cool down.
I'm going to use some Space Wolves Gray here just for the hell of it.
Yeah, let's try
how it comes out.
On the wolf pelt and stuff like that.
Sorry, Contrast Space Wolves Gray. Not to be confused with Out of Production Space Wolves
Gray. Now, to be fair, the Out of Production Space Wolves Gray is a very different color. That's more shadow gray.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, it's more shadow gray than it is Space Wolf Gray.
But I'm wondering if it's going to go on so translucent it kind of doesn't matter. Like, it's going to... Yeah, because it's like, as much as it's very dark here, it's actually very, very light on the model. Right. It's going on really thinly.
And I have been giving those a good shake before I start using them, just trying to get the pigment like evened out. But it seems like the suspension's okay. Yeah. Which is weird for like something that should have a low surface tension. Like it should be that all the pigment's in the bottom, and you should want to give them a really good shake when they're done. I will mention that these have the same tall boy danger zone. You're probably going to spill a couple of these in your life. Thing is the shades, right? That whole like was like internet.
Can I plug a sponsor?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Agrax Earth shade like knocked over. It's like the ultimate like betrayal, and you feel like shit because you've just wasted like a tall boy of Agrax Earth shade or whatever.
Yeah. Get yourself some Wash Wizards from Game Envy.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, you're plugging.
GameEnvy.net. Use coupon code EpicDuck. Save yourself 10%.
Oh shit! It started. He started plugging. Oh man! Now I have to have you back so you can do it again. You can figure out who you're gonna plug next. So what the fuck? What are you talking about?
So Wash Wizard, it's basically just like a giant foot that you set the wash bottle into.
Oh, so it can't fall
like
over.
When you tip it, it just kind of like bounces back. That's literally all it is. It's like a base that has just like a slot for the pot to go into.
To go inside of, so you don't knock it over. You know what's funny is I love this industry for that reason. That something like that, something that's so like. It
solves a problem that like 5 people in the world have.
No, actually, way more than 5 people. It's a meme, right? So like way more than 5 people have that problem.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
It solves such a niche problem.
It's a niche in a niche in a niche.
Exactly. It's one of the reasons we haven't cured cancer yet. Is people are coming up with these solutions rather than solutions for things like diabetes and cancer and whatever else is out there that we should just be curing. That makes me laugh. Well, there you go. Yeah, you guys got your coupon code now.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Let's Talk, where we also let's chill. How's that going on? I used it on the wolf on that Sworn Sword Captain, and I wasn't super impressed with it.
Yeah, I'm not loving this one. There's almost too much variation between like the light tone and the dark tone.
Right.
You know, it's
And that one's clearly meant to go over Gray Seer as well.
Oh yeah. So like what I'm seeing here is that like at like sort of like the high points, the base coat's just preserved. Like you're not even seeing any tint to it at all.
Yeah.
And then it's getting like a really dark blue in the like I wouldn't.
Well, I mean, look what it dries too. Because it's funny because when
they do dry different for sure.
Yeah, because when the Sworn Sword Captain first had that base coat of gray on his cloak, it was a lot lighter than it was after it dried. It almost seems like some of the pigment gets pulled up.
Like it reversed capillaries back up.
Yeah. As the drying action takes place.
Well, we'll see.
So I will say that like one of the things you do have to wait is actually sorry, one of the things you do have to do when you're starting to use this paint line is you're gonna have to figure out what each paint does. You know what I mean? Because like it is not obvious looking at the paint pots at all what they actually do when you start using them, and they.
No, it's just like I'd almost want to just have like prime up like a sprue of your spare bolters or whatever, and label each one, right?
Yeah. There's so many sprues that do two things now. I jokingly have a bunch of them lying around. The Skitari are like that. The Skitari frame is hilariously like full of bits when you're done. Yeah. So like whatever you got left over. And actually, sorry, that actually brings something to mind. One super annoying thing about that Space Marine, and actually also the Hound, is that colored plastic totally messes this up.
Okay.
Because you have to do such a deep cover of primer.
Right. Your primer has to be so much more vigorous.
And you have to get every single spot on the miniature because the underlying color is coming through with these paints, right?
Right.
So like let's say you're doing the, what's that thing called? Conquest? The part play that they're doing right now for 40K.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like blue Space Marines and green Nurgle guys. You got it, like, that's one of those times where I think in either investing in that rattle can of primer, the whatever color primer is.
Yep.
Is probably going to be important because you really have to cover these miniatures.
Or literally anything from Shadespire, right? Like every single team is a different color plastic.
Exactly, yeah. Because the color's going to show through, and that's going to mess up what these contrast paints do. Because you do need to have a light base, either warm or cold light base tone underneath for the paints to show off correctly. Like they won't, they are going to be tinted by whatever's underneath them, and if you don't use the correct kind of like tones, it's going to be weird. I think there's probably some play there though, because you can imagine if you put a blue contrast paint over a red miniature underneath, you'd get like a purple. Like if you're smart, you know a bit about color, you might actually be able to play off of that. But if you're just trying to use them, you know, like as it says in the tin, like as directed, you're going to really want to heavily prime those colored miniatures so you're not having any color stuff show through.
Yeah.
That's cool. The yellow, is that a yellow or is it a brown? Which one is that?
Nazdrag Yellow.
Nazdrag Yellow, yep. Nazdrag is the old Bad Moon warlord from second edition, who I don't think has a miniature anymore. He had one. Well, he had a miniature. He had an awesome second edition Meganob miniature,
right?
Where the Meganobs all looked like they were the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. Like they all had like this weird, like not power armor basically, and the Meganobs just had more kind of shit stuck to them. They weren't even particularly bigger. They just had bigger guns and like weirder poses for the most part. I think I still have that Nazdrag miniature somewhere. There was Zogwart and stuff too.
Yeah. All right, let's try and find something kind of stone-ish.
There's the Black Templar. Try the Black Templar, because that one's probably
Shyish purple. Like this is called Shyish purple. It looks like black. Like I don't even see any. I'm gonna just put a spot of this on the base.
Let's try it.
See what it looks like.
See how it works. You put it on the stones. See how it looks.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Is like just use this to like. Oh, that is okay. So that's one of the super pigmented ones.
Holy shit, it's super black, isn't it?
It's like, yeah, that's. So that would actually work really well for doing like that's more like a Space Marine cover.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like this is like that does not do what I wanted it to. Like I saw that dark green, I'm like, oh cool, I'm gonna get like a salamander kind of color.
But I don't.
Like, not even close. Like not even a little bit, right? Whereas like this is so obviously some of them are more meant to like this is meant I would think to color like your sort of detail objects, right? Like. You could throw this on a gun or a sword or like a cloak or something.
A gemstone, yeah.
Right, and it's going to work really well. But like on the armor, this is crap.
A bigger surface, it's not working. Yeah, there's too much. There's too much of the base coat showing through. Actually, even if you want.
And so I almost think these like fit into like two categories, where one is sort of like going to be better for doing those bigger surface areas.
So
and
here's a pro tip. This is something we did when the shades first came out. I remember in retail stores. And if you're a retailer looking to sell these paints, I would highly recommend this. Grab yourself like however many contrast paints there are. Grab yourself that many Space Marines.
Yeah.
Prime them, and then do a display that's literally just a card of all the names and
absolutely.
And one of those Space Marines just covered in that contrast paint, so people can see what it does. Because as we said earlier, it is really not self-evident.
No, and like I said, they're fitting into like 2 different complete categories, like how they behave.
Yeah, and I think people are gonna have their favorites. There's gonna be a Devlin Mud. Like I really like that brown, that Sigor brown. Yeah, because it's fast. You know what I mean?
Actually, like I'm really happy with that yellow. That was sort of the Naz whatever.
Nazric yellow.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, like that worked really well.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be ones that pop out as being staples, right? Because that happens every time there's a new paint launch. There's always a Charadon Granite. There's always a Devlin Mud. There's always a paint color that like lives in legend, basically from then on. There's always, if you want to
we're all looking for the new Mecray red, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your chestnut inks, your brown inks. There was a joke for a long time. If you didn't know what to do with a color, just throw some brown ink over top of it, and it would look really good.
It's not really wrong.
Well, it's very hard to mess up with a brown ink wash. But again, it's going to take some experimentation. And if you are a retailer and you're looking to sell these things, rather like this is like a show don't tell. I think don't try and like
don't even try and describe these.
No, just show them what it's going to look like.
Also, there's too many of them to like keep that like mental inventory. Like
absolutely.
Like I said, like if you don't have that many Space Marines, like at least do like a tray of bits, right?
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't matter what it is. It could just be Space Marine heads. It could literally be anything that's got some detail that you can prime up real fast and throw those on top of. I only say Space Marines because I know that like every like retailer in the world probably has Space Marine demo painting things.
Space Marines are also just like in general a good mix of like big flat smooth surfaces and like kind of smaller crane. Like
they have a you're right. They have a good sort of mix of either big panely places or small etched in detail that should show off the colors and stuff. But yeah, whatever it is, even just like you said, parts, make yourself a display of what it's going to look like. And I think you'll find it's way easier to describe how these things work and what they do. Because I mean, you and I are just kind of playing with them for the first time, and there's obviously already a short list of ones where you're like, oh, I totally use these again.
Yeah.
This is the fastest flush ever. I just have to do like 2 highlights and I'm done. Whereas for other things,
like I don't love how that like the space will. It's actually funny. It is getting better the longer it dries.
Did I tell you the longer it dries, it darkens up a little bit?
Yeah. Which is weird. It's almost like you said, it kind of goes on with that sort of. It creeps into the recesses like the old washes did, and it sort of seems to like
pull back
as
up.
It's drying, it's pulling back up out.
Yep, absolutely.
Because it's drying where it's thinnest, right? So it's going to dry on the flat surface, and then sort of
it's going to dry top down, exactly. But it seems to be pulling some of the pigment along with it, or it's just that pigment settling, right? And it's settling onto the miniature and looking
either way,
looking nice and.
All right, let's see if we can find something that looks wood-ish. A Garros Dunes, sure, why not?
That sounds. Like
I'm just picking a random color. Dunes and
it's a sandy color. There's a skeleton.
Yeah, there's a skeleton horde.
Yeah, that might be good.
All right, so again, we're just gonna do a quick little test on the base here. All right, that's a little more. Actually, that's not bad. That's a very lively kind of wood color.
Could kind of be like a chestnut.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah, we'll use that. I just want something for.
And it's less yellow than the actual yellow is.
That's just I want something just a little different for the. There we go.
I think these are going to be really popular with the D&D crowd that quickly wants to paint some miniatures.
That's just it. Like I've got this guy. He's practically table ready, and it's been 15 minutes, 20 minutes
on the outside. And all you got to really learn is a bit of brush control and how to be patient, basically putting the colors in so they don't bleed together.
The other thing is, like, speaking of bleeding the colors together, if you kind of pick your adjacent colors, like where I've got skin tone and brown and this like much lighter brown,
they're not gonna,
it doesn't matter so much if they blend a little bit, right?
Absolutely. That fade's not gonna, because they're all in the same family. They're all like a warm brown tone with like some yellow to them. So
especially because like I'm not, obviously this is not display painting. This is get it on the table painting, and so a little splotch here and there isn't
gonna end of the world. And I actually think it's gonna do better on smaller, like I said, smaller miniatures. So this would be actually really good for like your Monster Apocalypse grunts and stuff. Things like the tanks or what are those things? The flesh puppets? Those little guys for the
the meat slaves.
The meat slaves. That might be my favorite name in miniature gaming. That sounds like something that'd be at a Guar concert.
They are such like it's such a good little model though too. It's like a super fat guy that just like explodes into.
Oh, it's Pearl from Blade.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I forgot. Yeah, it's literally Pearl from Blade. I forgot about that. That's a great miniature. That's a great. Oh my god, I forgot about Pearl from Blade. they shine the UV light on her, and she starts to like explode.
But then, monsters come out.
More monsters, more Cthulhu monsters.
Yeah.
From outer space. But yeah, no, I think this will work really well on pretty much. You'll get to see, because there's going to be a whole playlist of videos of me basically just trying to paint miniatures from different product lines just with these contrast paints.
Yep.
And I've got a couple Reaper Bones miniatures. I got a wolf and a female dwarf warrior to paint up. I'm excited to try it out. I got some Batman stuff, some Song of Ice and Fire stuff, some 40K stuff, some Infinity stuff. And I think they're all just going to showcase, like, it's just paint with washes. I think there's a whole school of doing this, at least for base coating quickly.
So one other thing I would just suggest, if you're only working on like one model like this, get the Citadel handle or a Game Envy handle or something, because like I'm constantly having to pick this guy up by the model, and like
you might splash
bad
around.
things will happen.
Yeah, it might splash around.
Yeah.
Handles, amateurs with their handles,
or blue tack it to an old pill bottle, like
That's
whatever.
Right, yeah. I was gonna say,
if you're the kind of person that trusts blue
film
tack,
film canister, the thing you don't see anymore.
Someone would have to go buy some film first. And then you have to find out where to buy film.
I'm dating myself there. It's funny. My mom and dad's house is full of film canisters because like we used to save them to do like things like keep coins in or like whatever in a junk drawer. You know what I mean? You organize your junk drawer.
Or you just kept the negatives forever.
Well, and I just started to realize what a complete anachronism those things are. Like they feel weird to have around now because they just don't get used.
Remember they used to you'd open your grandparents' fridge and there'd just be like a whole bunch of them on the door?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Random film canisters. The best miniature painting handle from 1994. Because you just fill them with something heavy, you just fill them with rocks or whatever, and then just blue tack stuff to them. That's
as long as you trust blue tack.
The original handle. Yeah, I think so. Well, there we go. I think we're just about winding down here. We've tried these out. We've given them a college go. And I guess here's our first sort of let's talk about stuff episode where I really just wanted to kind of get honest chat about things.
Absolutely.
We haven't done this format before, and I think that
we also just haven't hung out and painted in a very long time.
We haven't hung out and painted in a very, very long time. I think this is going to be good going forward because I think we can do this with a lot of different topics. There's a lot of different topics that I think come up that
here's another super
a super dark one. Which one's that?
This is the Wildwood.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to try and just add like a little shadow with it.
I actually used that Wildwood on the fur cape on the dude over there. But yeah, no, I think this is useful. Getting people who are not necessarily experts in their field, but are very experienced in a field. So for you, for instance, miniature painting, and just sitting down and chatting about a given topic. And I think the contrast paints were a good kickoff because they're new and they're
the new hotness.
They're definitely in like the public forum right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The things people are talking about. And I think they are exactly as advertised. They're a great way to get quick contrast on a model from dark to light. And there's going to be people that are going to use them. There's going to be people that aren't going to use them. You know what I mean? I don't think they're going to do much for veteran painters that they aren't already doing just with like glazes and certain mediums. Creating their own.
The other thing is if nothing else, like I know how to make my own mediums and make my own glazes, but like if nothing else, this will save time and add consistency, right? Like things when you're making your own ones, like you're kind of randomizing the color a little tiny bit.
That's right. Yeah.
Whereas this one, hopefully, like the fifth pot's gonna be the same as the first pot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're gonna have, and as long as
and that's the whole reason to just buy pre-mixed paint in the first place, as opposed to just like having recipes was like, it's 5 dabs of blue and 1 dab of red.
Being like the masters and making it a snail blood. Yeah. Like sea snails.
But then like your next snail ate like the wrong lunch, now your color's wrong.
Exactly it. That's why, it's funny because I remember, that's actually a bit of trivia, I believe. It's either a modern myth or it's a real piece of trivia about why purple was the imperial color in Rome. And it was because they had to dive to get sea snails. Because the pigment was made from crushed sea snails.
I believe it.
And so it was hard to get and expensive, and so it was the imperial color. It was the color of rich people, basically.
No one else could bother paying for the labor to get the color.
Well, that was it, yeah, because it was a pain in the ass to get and a pain in the ass to make. And the old masters all made their own paints and stuff like that. So this is one of those things where, like you said, there's going to be consistency, and you're not going to have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
I like everything. It's because it's been highly publicized and sort of like put out there. So, loudly, there's going to be a lot of like differing opinions and people talking about it. But I think it does exactly what it says it's going to do.
It does what it says on the tin.
And I think that you can. So I guess what are the questions we answer here? One, the primer doesn't matter. Use whatever primer you want.
Yeah.
As long as it's not all the usual problems with primer, like you sprayed it in too hot or cold an environment.
Yeah.
And it got all fuzzy. It's gonna take the contrast.
I feel like you probably want to avoid like sort of like really, really toothy primers, but I could be wrong on that. We don't know for sure yet.
Yep. And then 2, just warm and cold primers, right? You're either going with a warm blue-gray or a cool blue-gray and like a warmer like beige. And you're going to get the best out of these because that's the whole point is you're just warmer and cool tinting these glazes as they go over top. So don't worry about primer. If you do want to use the official colors, but you don't want to grab the rattle cans and you want to use your existing primers, all the results we got just now, we got with just Vallejo Surface Primer or either of these 2 Rust-Oleum primers and then just airbrushing the base paints over top. They might do an air version. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what else is coming for this right now.
Yeah.
I didn't even know
what
what
they have said that there are more paints coming later this year, and they haven't really said more than that.
Yeah.
That was on one of the Forge World pages.
So that was the first big question I think we've answered is the primers are just, hey, look, primer is primer. Ah!
Yeah. It primes.
It's not going to come to your house and break your miniatures to use somebody else's primer.
No.
The second one was the big surface, small surface thing, and I think we've adequately shown that even like moderate to big surfaces, this isn't going to be the best course of action for making things big. You definitely want to just use your standard big colors techniques. Like you're going to want to use your airbrushes and your big fat paintbrushes still if you're just using base paints.
I have seen people put these through airbrushes and you get a good tint from them, but of course you lose all the contrast action, right? Like it just goes on as a solid
color because its magic trick is the drying, right? So like if you're spraying it through an airbrush, it's already
you're taking away the drying aspect. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're basically just using a ghost tint at that point. It's gonna be thin, so it's gonna show the color underneath too. So I wouldn't.
So just coming back to the space marine here, like the shoulder looks like crap. Like let's be honest, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it pooled.
It pooled and then like unpooled here, like it pulled away from the one edge. So I got this weird like.
Well, and then what's weird is on the other.
But it actually looks better on the one that has the trim around the edge.
Because the trim itself pulled that into the detail and gave you a proper fade.
Yeah, so this one where there's like no crease to grab into, it kind of doesn't know what. It's almost like it doesn't know how to behave.
Yeah. Well, no, it's pooling in the middle. So what's happening is it's literally pooling in the middle of the surface.
Yeah.
And trying it doesn't have a lowest point to reach because there's no trim there.
So it's just it's a bubble and it's just forming in the middle.
Well, it's wherever dried the fastest.
Yeah.
So it's what's happening is the color is going to the center of wherever the color is drying fastest there.
Yep.
And you can see gravity's pulled it down the shoulder pad. If you want to flip it over, gravity's pulled it down the shoulder pad.
Yeah.
And so you have that pool where
you've got a dark spot way back here.
It's like almost like a band of basically pigment that's landed in one surface.
But then this weird white edge.
The white because it's pulled away from that edge. Right? That's a high point.
Yeah.
So it's created this its own little area for the pigment to all kind of reach.
Whereas like the outline shoulder pad worked significantly. So I'd almost just say like if you know you're going to be using these paints, you almost can pick your bits to accommodate it in a way too.
Yeah. I mean, that yellow and orange color will be great for doing like Imperial Eagles or anything that's got like a good bunch of recessed detail that it can fade away from. And that dwarf actually looks fantastic, mostly because he's just covered in detail, right? Like he's covered in like low points.
His entire he's covered in fur/beard, basically like 2/3 of the model, and another third is just like ropes,
skin or color,
or like muscles. Like there's nothing here that's. Like, the flattest surface is his axe.
Is the axe blade, yeah.
And even that's got, like, some flinting to it, right? Or some napping. So it's like...
It's got something for the pigment to go into to create that fade. And have those rage areas for the fade to go away from, basically, where the primer's showing through.
Yeah, like, he turned out really well. And like I say, like, this... I mean,
that's
probably about half an hour.
Yeah, 30 minutes and he's tabletop ready. I mean, for a lot of people, that's a really, I think, like attractive proposition.
Like,
absolutely. And the nice thing is too, we've answered I think a bit of a question about the drying time and stuff. You're gonna freak out over it. You do want a production line paint with these, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
When you finish guy number 10. Guy number 1's going to be dry, and you can, if you are doing it so that you're painting in blocks, right? You're not going to have your colors blend together because you've given a significant amount of time between the first one and the last one getting the color down on it.
Yeah, can you see here, like he's still got wet spots. And actually, I think he's still maybe even.
Is this one done?
The underneath the cloak is still a little bit wet. So
where gravity's pulled the
where it's the thickest,
it's the thickest.
So now just hang him upside down and we'll be fine. Right?
Yeah. Well, no, but
I know you messed up.
If there was 10 of him though.
Yeah.
Right, and I was still doing the black. At least I wouldn't have the two colors bleed into each other because the high points of the model would all be dry by now.
It's like that underside of the cloak there is irrelevant if you're doing the yellow next, right?
So again, I think qualified for production line painting. Don't you do this like?
Yeah, my camera's normally here.
Oh,
my camera's over the shoulder.
I see. I see. So you're just pushing stuff out of the way so people can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my... Okay,
it's most people are probably listening to this rather than watching it. Oh, it might be both. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
But so primer doesn't matter. I'm trying to think of what other questions we got. Primer doesn't matter. Yes, it works on non-Citadel miniatures. That was
Did someone literally ask?
Someone asked that. I said, if I was to do some videos about this stuff, what would you guys want to know? And that was the question. Well, I think it was meant as a joke, but yes, it works just fine. Yes. And in fact, actually, I think on certain miniature lines, it's going to be even better because there aren't these huge surfaces.
I think it worked better on this Relic Blade Dwarf than it did on a Space Marine.
Yeah. You're welcome for the plug, Sean, by the way. There's my shilling for the day. Let's show for Relic Blade. Go to MetalKingStudios.com and buy some awesome fantasy miniatures. Use coupon code. I don't have a coupon code. Shockingly, coupon code. And then I think that the last one is, are all the colors like equally strong pigment wise? The answer is no.
No.
I think that if you are buying these blinds, do some research first, because honestly, you came in, you were the perfect example of someone sitting down blind with them and playing with it, and your first one was just like you're painting on disappointment. Like you were, I could tell, I could actually tell how unhappy you were.
Yes.
like from across the room here, where you're putting down that ground, you're like, this is not what I thought I was buying.
Yeah.
Because from the look of the pot, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you what it's going to look like on the miniature, because it's going to dry so differently from the color, like visually when you look at it. Is this the different green?
This is the Warp Lightning, which I'm going to assume is going to be I expect this one to be
Salamander
light
green?
right?
Yeah. Warp Lightning green.
That's got like a...
There you go, that's way darker. Yeah, that's way darker. So now you got...
So here's the funny thing, I expected this to be thinner than it is.
Yeah, so and that was the third thing, retailers, if you're going to be selling this paint, make yourself an example card of what this looks like.
Absolutely.
Find some bits, find something with a good tooth, and just write the names down. Get your label maker out, and I think it's going to help your customers to be happy with what they buy when it's all said and done. Because there's a whole lot of like trial and error, and not knowing what you can do. Now that's what you're doing right now. I just watched you do that. That's actually a trick I think that's going to be super handy, and I actually did it with the cloak, wiping it off. Yeah. That's right, smooth it out when you're done. So you can.
What's off camera here is just some water. So I'm just wiping the brush off. I've got some paper towels, so I'm just getting most of the water off the brush. I'm just
moving it away from the surface. Yeah. You're creating, so that's wet blending, literally is what that is. You're wet blending with just water on your brush to move it away to give yourself a lighter tone.
That's much more salamandery now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to dry flat, and it's going to look fine. And I think that, so again, now that's not a time saver though. So if you're painting like a big thing like a Terminator, and you're having to go and move the contrast paint around afterwards.
I think I literally splotched on too much of it because I was expecting a different result.
But you're supposed to. Right. You're supposed to be able to do that. You're supposed to be able to just throw it on, and that's the end result. But you can move it away if you want to have like a nicer fade, I guess, or go a little bit brighter. What's the other one you're using?
Plague Bearer Flesh. Let's give it a shot.
That one, it looked like it would be.
It looks like snot.
There you go.
Who would have thought?
It looks like Nurgle's Rot. Is that the technical
really
paint?
Close, yeah, I guess. Yes.
Just like tone-wise, it looks like almost the same color from across the room.
Well, that's fun. Actually, that worked really well over the Griff Charger.
So that's the third question that I was going to answer. Can we layer these?
Absolutely. I think you actually get some really interesting stuff layering these.
Because honestly, what you've done there with the Griff Charger is almost your comic book lining.
And that's actually a question I got was, am I going to be able to like use this to sort of speed up my comic style painting? Yeah. And I think the answer is maybe. Because the problem is like a lot of this doesn't look lined at all, but some of it does.
Yeah.
And so I think
you can play with it afterwards too.
Play with it, maybe even like add some thinner to it to sort of get it to pool even more. I don't know if it's going to work or not.
Did you ever make future floor wax washes?
Oh yes.
Because I was going to say that feels like the kind of thing that would speed up comic book lining. Because that's adding a really low surface tension medium to a color. I used to use them with inks. I used to use them with black ink and brown ink, and that would give you like that perfectly lined. Every recess basically is like super dark black, like super dark whatever the color is you're putting on, and this is kind of like that. You know, like you could do that for the comic book style stuff where, because the problem with the comic book style stuff is it's not just lining the recesses though, it's also creating those other lines.
Because you use lines to sort of like create action and texture on the model, right?
Right, and so you have to paint some lines on still too. So like, I mean, it could cut your corner for sure. Yeah, I don't know if you could use it for all of your lining basically. If
no, you can definitely use it for sort of your outlining. That's sort of like I break it down into like two different steps. There's outlining and then there's like detailing.
Right, gotcha.
And so it probably would be able to replace the outline.
The outlining part, yeah. So now you're throwing a brown over top.
Yes, this is orange over green, which of course just makes brown.
Which makes brown, yeah.
But knowing that, like, you know, if I had dropped this whole guy in green and I want to just make him have like some little brown pouches,
yeah,
you know,
can throw it over top and have it be done.
Yeah, there's some color.
I'm really interested. I wonder if people who are listening would be interested in doing like a contrast paint painting challenge, where we try and do like an army of a certain size using like, let's say you could pick. How about this for parameters? Let's say you could pick 5 other colors.
Okay.
So you could pick 5 other colors to go with your contrast paints. Like you could get a gold, a silver,
right,
white and black.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then like one other color to go with it.
Yeah.
But you have to paint your whole army using nothing but those 5 colors and contrast paints.
Okay.
Could you do it?
You could. I don't. It would depend on the army. I think.
Really?
I think so. Like, there's some armies that I don't think would like feel right.
Like what?
I don't know.
He's scared. He's got a scared look in his eye.
I'm just trying to think it through. Like, something about it feels off to me. I feel like, but
I'm trying to think of what you couldn't do with the contrast paint range as it is right now, black and white, and let's say silver and gold. You know what I mean? Like as your additional colors.
I'm thinking of like Necron warriors have so many like the tiny little ribs and then like all the like the stomach kind of like the messy guts hanging out at the bottom.
Yeah.
All the little ribs are going to just suck up the contrast paint.
Yep.
And then I don't know how it's going to behave on those tiny little thin surfaces, right? Like,
see, what I'm thinking of is if I have black and white in my arsenal there, I can blend regular layer colors out of any of these contrast paints and black and white by just adding a dot, because I'm just going to thicken it up.
But then you're kind of,
right?
I think that's sort of against the spirit of use contrast paint primarily.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying even just for my layers, but it isn't, because it's allowing you to touch up those things where the contrast paint hasn't sat exactly right. And do all your details, right? So like you can put a little bit of contrast paint in with like, let's say one of the flesh tones. And then all of a sudden you've got like your highlights for flesh. And then you can even blend down your metallics. Like if you take like a really bright gold and a really bright silver and blend in some contrast paint, you can blend them down to whatever the contrast color is for your base coat and then up to gold and silver to get like whatever your other detail colors are. I'd be interested in trying it. I'd be tempted to do it. I know Owen is, so like, it's funny because you and I aren't like, sorry, I'd say we're all in the middle. You're probably not exactly the target market for this paint. The target market is,
I would agree,
time-saving people who don't necessarily like to paint. I'm in the middle. I'm kind of the target market where I can definitely see some value.
You're the target market because you need to save time because you have 800,000 miniatures over there to paint.
I mean, if you look behind me, this is all painted in the last four years. So, and this is just part of it. Certainly there are elements and colors where I'm like, oh, I will definitely use these specific contrast paints for doing this specific thing. Like fur, I will 100% just dump contrast.
Oh god, yeah.
Because I don't want to go paint in fur, and it's going to be cleaner than dry brushing. You know what I mean? But for instance, for let's say a guy like Owen, he is hyped for these contrast paints.
Oh god, yeah.
Because he loves having painted armies. And he loves building miniatures, but he doesn't enjoy painting the way you and I enjoy sitting down and painting, right? Like, I paint to relax.
He paints an army when I paint a model, right?
He does, like, absolutely, but he just crushes it out. You know what I mean? But he likes to crush it out, and so many times he'll sit down with the two of us and ask for advice on what are the fewest steps I can do to accomplish X and Y result.
Yes.
Like, remember we taught him with zenithal priming? So we taught him how to basically black primer, white primer, and then all of his armies are painted like that.
Then he just literally fielded a black and white army that he just added some red dots to.
No, he put glazes over top. He literally did what the contrast paints do with like bits of color. And
I was thinking of his one Infinity army that was literally just like black primer, white primer, and he like put like a little red dot on every model or something.
It wasn't a red dot. It was the eyes. He did all the eyes for the military orders guys in red. But he is exactly the target market for this, where he loves having a finished army. Yeah. It's funny because you know what his other favorite thing is right now is battle ready bases from I think it's Green Stuff World.
Okay.
Are they doing them? Green Stuff Worlds?
I can't remember if it's them or not.
Gamergrass. Gamergrass I think is doing battle ready bases. I get
the battle ready bases?
Too confused.
Tell me about them really quick.
So they're finished bases. They're literally just like
fully pre-painted, like
fully pre-painted bases. They're
just
resin,
glue your model to a base.
You just pin your model to them and they're done. Yeah, it's Gamergrass. Because they do the tufts and stuff too. And they're like done. They're like just like literally you unpack them and you put your miniature on them and they're finished. And he loves them because he doesn't enjoy basing. But he enjoys having finished miniatures, right? So he'll literally just like do an entire army with these.
He enjoys the result, but not the process.
Bases. Exactly. These contrast paints are for a guy like Owen because he's been messaging me nonstop about them because he wants to know when they come in because he wants to try them out.
Of course.
He's painting in the Andon army right now. But my first comment to him was, the way you're painting your Yandon army right now, which is with a like mustard yellow primer, and then washes, is still going to be faster than using this, and you're going to use less paint and save more time.
Yep.
But like for doing individual miniatures, like maybe this is going to be faster for him. I actually think the way he's doing it's probably still going to be faster. But for his Infinity collection, he will totally use these paints.
Absolutely.
For his Relic Blade stuff, he will totally use these paints. And for the way he paints, this is actually a great paint line because it's gonna give him results that are, I think, even a step beyond what he's doing right now in the exact same amount of time, right? If he just primes white and paints these on, he'll be done in the same amount of time as, you know, if he zenithally primes something and then just like puts thin coats of paint down instead, which is what he's doing right now.
Right.
And so what's interesting is between you, me, and him, we're the 3 different markets, and I think that it's like I'm gonna be the person that probably has his favorite colors of this paint line. Owen's the guy that's gonna be using this, trying to find things he can paint using this paint line, and you'll be the guy who's like, yeah, there's definitely like 2 or 3 of these paints that I'm like, these are total time savers for me, and I'm gonna totally use them whenever I do X or Y.
I think some of these are, like I said, they're gonna probably play more into my comic style painting than anything else, because like I can do all my black and white work and just add a little splash of color on.
Yep, absolutely, and I think that's gonna be, like I said, I think everybody's experience is. Depending where you are with like how much time do I want to spend painting, that's where you're going to dive into this paint range, right? So if you are like what you are, where you've got like hours to paint a single miniature because the result is the single miniature, like that's what you're looking for. The result is actually the process of getting there. There's going to be things in here that you're going to kind of a la carte, right? Whereas for me, it's going to be the same, but it's going to be for different reasons. It's because I got to paint 50 miniatures. And I'm going to be like, I don't want to paint fur. I'm going to do this with contrast paint instead of doing it some other way. And then I was going to be like, yo, I got an orange contrast paint. What army can I do orange? And that's where we're going to end up. And I think that's going to be the experience probably for most of you listening, is that you're going to find, this paint range is going to settle on you based on where you are kind of like mentally with painting. And so, and the other thing I would say is don't bag on the people that do like it for the reason that you don't. You know what I mean? Or for the opposite reason that you, I guess. You know, because there has been some on the internet lately is people bagging on the paints, being like, they can't do this, they can't do that. Why would they use them? It's like, well, but someone needs them, and if someone needs them, then there's a market for it. If there's a market for it, then someone should make it.
If some dude is painting his models by like melting crayons, like let him have it.
Well,
like,
and I'd rather see more finished miniatures. Like
that's just it.
I'd rather see contrast painted armies than just like
gray armies.
Bags of miniatures and gray armies. Exactly. It's just removing obstacles, and I think that's a great thing to have as an aim, because obviously that is one of the goals of this paint line, is to take obstacles away from people who wouldn't otherwise get their projects done. Right. Not to say you have to paint your miniatures, but to say, hey, here's an easier way of doing it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you're gonna get a decent result.
So the one thing is, like, we haven't played a game of 40K except for Kill Team literally ever.
No, I don't
Last time I played 40K, Owen still worked at Mini Wargaming.
That's at least 6 years ago.
That's about 6 years ago. Yeah. And the reason for that is I don't have a fully painted 40K army anymore.
Right.
And so as much as like my personal painting goal is always make this one miniature like stand out. Like that's how I like to paint. I can still see myself throwing this at an army just to have something on the table. Yeah. Because your plain army doesn't have made display pieces.
No. That's right. Well, I mean, that's always been a thing with miniature wargaming, is there's the 2-foot rule for everybody but the leaders. What was the joke with Warhammer Fantasy Battle? Only the front rank needs eyes, because that's how everybody else where to go. That's how everybody else where to walk and where to go. That's a thing I think these contrast paints, they do really well, is they say, here's another way of doing things, and if you want to save some time, you can save the time in these ways. Whether it's just blocking out like a base tone on all these miniatures, which is probably what I'll do with the Infinity ones. It's just going to be, I'm going to throw all my like 3-color base coat down with them, and then I'm going to go back in with my other paints and like detail them out. Or you do what you did with that dwarf, right? And you literally paint the whole thing start to finish in like maybe half an hour.
Yeah, I haven't picked out his eyes yet. Like that's the only thing, is I probably went with the brush and just like pick out his eyes and like maybe add some like edging to his axes or something.
Yeah, like make them like flinty and stuff like that.
Yeah, because right now they're not flinty. That's about.
but there's people, but that's only going to bother you, right?
Right.
For someone that's looking at saving time doing this,
2-foot rule,
that's a great finished miniature. Yeah, let me see.
Like that's fine.
Yeah, I actually want to see him up close. Yeah, man, he looks really good. He's super like detailed for having been painted as quickly as he was.
Yeah, And I think that's it's called the ZBrush effect, and it's because like it's so easy when you're doing digital sculpting to take a detail and copy and paste it 50 times, right?
Right.
And so because of that, like, because most sculpting is moving to digital, because it's just so much more accessible for people, more and more miniatures are like more and more detailed.
Right.
Right?
Because they can be.
Well, because the thing is, like, when people were sculpting entirely by hand, everything was done very much at like a painterly scale, because the same kinds of motions are going into making a miniature as they're going into painting it, right?
You had to physically sculpt it the same way.
So you're not going to make something smaller than you can physically see because you're looking at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas like when you're sculpting, like I sculpt in VR right now, and like I can make my model 8 feet tall and then print it 1 inch tall, right? Like, and so I can make things that are like sub-pixel resolution when it's printed, and it's a waste of time to do it.
It's funny because I used to say that about, you remember when the first round of Malifaux miniatures came out? And like they because they were being done in ZBrush with like digital dollies, they looked like model train miniatures to me. They didn't have any flair. They didn't have any heroic proportions.
Yeah.
They were beautifully sculpted, but when you came time to print them 1.5 inches tall, they didn't look like toy soldiers. They had this like weird, it was like someone dressed mannequins to go to the Old West.
Right.
And I think that's what you're talking about there.
This sort of just when you're not working at the same scale that you're going to be painting it at later, you lose touch with it sometimes. Right?
It used to be called the touch test. It was why when rapid prototyping came into miniature wargaming originally, they'd print everything and actually hand it to someone to put together. Not just to make sure that it went together, although that was really important. And that's what 3-ups used to be used for when they were just doing it with tool and die. But it's also so that like you can actually like just see it 1.5 inches tall. Right, put it down on the table and like hem and haw over it.
Does it look okay?
Exactly. And what's great, and I don't want to bag on Malifaux because they were clearly aware of that problem and fixed it over time. Like if you compare to the Lucius Bound by Law and the what's his name, the Nightmares box, the one with the guys addicted to dreams, the guys addicted to like demon dust. I can't remember. What it's called.
I can't remember their names, but yes,
the card player guy. Those ones are very different proportionally than the later ones, where the later ones, like when they're doing the goblins and the awesome like avatars and stuff like that, not the avatars, the emissaries, they have this wonderful like caricaturiness to them, because clearly the people sculpting them had learned, oh, this thing has to look good on the table, and so we can exaggerate proportions we wouldn't normally exaggerate when we're digitally sculpting to make something that's going to have that kind of like whimsy and wow on the tabletop when you actually sit next to it. I think that's a great example too of when you look at the difference between, like, for instance, the Bones minis I have there, which are sculpted by hand. Like, look at how big the rivets are on that shield. Pick up that dwarf, the female dwarf.
Yeah.
Right, on your right.
To my right? Yep. There we are. Yes.
Yeah. And look at the rivets on her shield.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're massive.
Well, the thing is, like, those are probably cut off of a, like, 1/4 millimeter plastic card rod. Like, they're probably not even...
Absolutely. They're probably not sculpted because they wouldn't all be the same size. They're probably cut off something.
Yeah.
But I think it's a Werner clock miniature, too.
I think you're right, yeah.
But like, if you visualize how big that is in real life, like, look at the size of her head and that rivet.
Oh, yeah, that rivet's like
it's
this
like,
big. Yeah,
it's like the size of, like, a donut. You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's
like that's a ship rivet. Like,
ship rivet. Exactly. That'd be on the Titanic. That'd be on, like, the bulkhead of the Titanic.
Yeah.
And she's, like, carting around her shield. But the difference is because she's only, like
that rivet alone weighs enough to, like, get tired carrying it.
Exactly. But she's 3/4 inch tall. So you need it to stand out like that in order to be impressive and look right on the table, right? Whereas like some of these other miniatures where you see the proportions are very, very, I don't want to say soft, but like smooth.
Well, because what happens is they sculpt it like it's a person.
Right.
And they don't sculpt it like it's a miniature. So they don't get like the nice deep creases for like a wash to flow into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the nice sharp edge for a brush to glide along. They sculpt it.
Or even to highlight.
It's
It's too finely done.
It's basically. And so the problem is like you get a lot of like the really, really finely done ones. By the time you prime it, half the detail's gone.
Right. And so these contrast paints in particular wouldn't be great for that.
Would be sad for that.
They would be sad for that.
Whereas like this was a hand sculpted miniature at one point, was it not? Or did he do this digitally?
No, he did 100%.
I didn't remember if he did that one digitally or not.
No, man. Sean did the Berserker 100. That was from Wave 2, I'm pretty sure. It's 100% digitally.
But you can tell he's probably done some test prints and made sure it was a paintable
miniature.
If
you compare him to Sean's Questing Knight from the original Rockblade box set, you see the difference in just like the amount, the depth and the cuts and the detail and stuff. You can see that same, I think, learning process basically when you're sculpting digitally. And so these, I think, again, it's about even just picking the right tool for the right job. Like, these contrast paints are going to work better on something like that dwarf than they are even on that Reaver, right? Like, that Reaver's got big, smooth details.
Well, like, it was funny because you posted up a picture of, like, a whole bunch of prime miniatures. Like, hey, let's get started. And I was like, hey, let's paint this guy. I'm like, as soon as I got here, I'm like, no. Like, he's probably like the worst thing to choose to do contrast paint on.
Yeah. Because well, it's funny is he's almost. I think what you could try it on him is the. Why don't you throw down some of that apothecary, whatever it was. Oh, you're almost done for time. Okay.
Yeah, we also only have 8 minutes left on this camera.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Well, then we are almost done for time. That apothecary white probably would actually work pretty well.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's try it very, very quickly.
And
I'll
see if we
spend
can get
like
it done.
30 seconds here.
We're not
going to know what it looks like dry, but you can post that up later.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna do 360s of all these miniatures, like superimposed. So people are probably actually seeing it right now, dry.
So I don't even like. I almost don't even see anything happening. Like, it's that white.
It's that thin, eh?
Well, the problem is I'm applying it to like a flat surface, and so I think it's gonna.
It probably
the color comes where it pools.
It probably looks better on a Space Marine. I'm curious what it looks like on that Space Marine that's in behind.
Well, here, let's do like a more like his shoulder joint here is a little more detailed.
Because this is actually, well, I mean, this is a lighter primer than that Gray Seer, right?
Yes,
this is a pure white primer, so that should be showing up. If it's going to show up anywhere, it's going to show up on that. Because in the Gray Seer, it won't show up at all, right?
Yeah. So what this is, this one almost like is translucent on the flat surfaces, and it's almost like it needs to pool to even get some color.
Right. So it wouldn't work on a big egg-shaped surface, but it will work on where the details and stuff are. There you go. Give it a try.
And I purposely loaded up with a little more there, so it's a.
That would be a good one to use the wet brush, I think, to move around probably.
Yep.
Interesting. Be interesting to see how that dries. Anyway, you guys will be seeing it right now because it'll be spinning around because I put on the Lazy Susan.
They're gonna see it before I do.
And film it so you guys can see it all spin.
Did I bring the Lazy Susan in? Yes.
It's right there. Yeah, it's sitting there. It's sitting there next to you.
It's sitting there spinning with nothing on it.
Okay. Well, we'll let Mike go home. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let's talk about contrast paints. And for you watching on YouTube, of course, you can obviously see the visuals. And for you listening to it as a podcast, check out my YouTube channel. There'll be a whole playlist of Let's Talk About videos for you to check out. You can also check out the playlist of all the contrast painting I'm doing. I'll be sitting down for the rest of the day recording a whole bunch of videos of me just quick painting. They're probably like sped up like 5 or 10 minutes long and me quick painting all this stuff. So we'll see you next time, and we'll, I guess, talk to you next time for another Let's Talk. And we'll cover a new topic. I think the next Let's Talk I'm going to be doing is either going to be about point values in wargaming or competitive 40K.
All right.
Those are 2 topics we're talking about. So see you next time. Till then, I'm Ash. This is Mike.
Cheers.
Wargaming.